Have you ever found yourself caught in an endless cycle of regret? Replaying moments in your mind, wishing you had acted differently, spoken differently, chosen differently? That constant whisper of, if only. Regret is one of our most painful emotional experiences. It sits heavy in our chest, coloring our present with shadows from the past. Yet within this familiar pain lies an unexpected doorway to freedom. By the end of our journey together, you'll understand why regret has been haunting you and discover practical tools to transform it from a prison into a pathway toward greater wisdom and self-compassion. Imagine regret as an unwelcome visitor who somehow gained a permanent seat at your table. This visitor constantly reminds you of your missteps, perceived failures, and roads not taken. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called this the sickness unto death, a despair that stems from not accepting oneself. Regret occurs at the intersection of choice and awareness. It emerges when we gain new perspective that makes our past decisions appear flawed through our current understanding. The pain comes from this temporal disconnect, judging our past self with our present knowledge. In essence, regret is the emotional aftermath of perceiving a gap between what happened and what could have happened. It's the shadow cast by the light of possibilities we now see but couldn't see then. Some regret is natural and even healthy, a signal that we care about our actions and their consequences. But chronic regret becomes a form of self-imprisonment, what psychologist Carl Jung might call an unconscious complex controlling our emotional life. When you repeatedly revisit and agonize over past actions, you're actually engaging in a form of time travel without the benefit of being able to change anything. You're judging yesterday's self with today's wisdom. Have you considered that the version of you who made those regrettable choices was operating with a different consciousness, different information, and different emotional resources than you have now? Take a moment to reflect on your most persistent regret. Now imagine sitting across from your younger self at that moment of decision. What do you see in their eyes? Fear? Confusion? Limited options? The philosopher Martha Nussbaum suggests that emotions like regret contain judgments about things that matter to us. Your regret reveals what you value. What does your particular regret tell you about what matters most to you? Consider this. What if regret isn't actually about the past at all, but about your present relationship with uncertainty and imperfection? What if it's actually fear disguised as hindsight? The intensity of regret often correlates with the illusion of certainty we create in retrospect. I should have known better assumes you could have known what you now know. This ignores the reality of human perception and decision-making. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman calls this hindsight bias, our tendency to believe, after an event has occurred, that we would have predicted or expected it beforehand. It creates a false sense that the world is more predictable than it actually is. Imagine walking through a dense fog where you can only see a few feet ahead. That's how we move through life, making choices with limited visibility. Yet we judge ourselves as if we had been standing on a mountaintop with perfect clarity. Our brain manufactures this illusion of, I should have known, to create a false sense of control. If you should have known, then theoretically you could control future outcomes by knowing better. This is partially why we cling to regret. The truth? We are always doing the best we can with the consciousness we have in any given moment, even when that best later seems woefully inadequate to our evolved understanding. One client of mine spent decades regretting not pursuing art school, believing he had chosen wrong by following a practical career. His regret was a constant companion until he realized something profound. He wasn't really mourning his choice, but using regret to avoid facing his fear of creative vulnerability in the present. His regret was actually protecting him from risking failure now. Have you considered that your regret might be serving a similar protective function? What present fear or pain might it be helping you avoid facing? Chronic regret also creates a particular kind of self-relationship. You become both prosecutor and defendant in an internal courtroom where the case never closes and new evidence of your failings is constantly admitted. This self-relationship often contains what psychologist Eugene Ginlin called a felt sense, a physically felt, pre-verbal experience that carries meaning. Where do you feel regret in your body? What is that sensation trying to communicate? In your reflection, be gentle with yourself. Notice if you're using the language of absolute certainty about past alternatives. I definitely would have been happier if. This is the language of illusion, not wisdom. The path beyond regret begins with understanding its anatomy. Regret has three components: your action or inaction, your current judgment of that choice, and your emotional response to that judgment. The key to freedom lies in working with all three. First, we must challenge the assumption that different actions would have led to clearly better outcomes. Life is a complex system of countless variables. The certainty of what would have happened if is always imaginary. Poet David Whyte beautifully describes regret as an attempt to avoid living with the consequences of our choices. We create a fantasy alternative timeline rather than fully inhabiting the life our choices have created. Consider keeping a regret journal for 1 week. Each time regret surfaces, write down your specific, if only, thought. Then ask, do I know with absolute certainty this alternative would have been better? Be ruthlessly honest about your answer. Second, examine the judgment behind your regret. Are you holding your past self to impossible standards of foresight? Are you demanding perfection from an imperfect human navigating an unpredictable world? Try this exercise. Write a letter from your current self to your past self at the moment of your regretted decision. Then write a response from that past self explaining their perspective and limitations. Allow both voices to be heard with compassion. Psychologist Kristin Neff speaks of self-compassion as having 3 elements: mindfulness of suffering, recognition of common humanity, and kindness toward oneself. Can you bring these qualities to your relationship with your regretted choices? Perhaps the most powerful question is, what would it mean to fully accept this choice as part of my story rather than a deviation from it? Not with resignation, but with genuine integration. Third, work with the emotional energy of regret directly. Emotions are energy in motion. They want to move through us rather than becoming stagnant pools of suffering. Next time regret arises, try this. Instead of immediately engaging with the mental story, focus on the physical sensation. Where is it in your body? What are its qualities? Allow it to be there without resistance. Then ask this sensation, what are you trying to protect me from feeling or facing right now? Often, beneath regret lies a more vulnerable emotion, grief, shame, or fear that we've been avoiding. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron offers a practice called staying with the uncomfortable energy, allowing difficult emotions to be present without either acting on them or suppressing them. This creates space for transformation. The alchemists of old spoke of solutio, the dissolution of rigid forms to create new possibilities. By staying present with regret rather than frantically trying to escape it, you initiate this alchemical process in your emotional life. Remember that philosopher whom we mentioned earlier, Kierkegaard? He also said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." The wisdom lies in accepting this fundamental human condition. Try reframing your regrets as necessary steps in your evolution of consciousness. Each mistake was actually a teacher, helping you develop the awareness you now possess. Without them, you wouldn't be who you are today. Another powerful practice is to extract the wisdom from your regret without carrying the weight of self-judgment. Ask, what has this experience taught me that I can apply moving forward? Then consciously release the emotional charge. Consider creating a ritual to honor what your regret has taught you. Write it down, express gratitude for the learning, then symbolically release it, perhaps by burning the paper or releasing it into flowing water. The Buddhist concept of beginner's mind can be healing here, approaching each moment with freshness, without being burdened by the judgments of the past or anxieties about the future. Your past does not determine your present unless you allow it to. As we begin to collect the threads of our exploration, remember that regret is not your enemy. It's a misguided attempt by your psyche to protect you from future pain. Thank it for its intention, then gently show it a better way. Your regrets don't define you, they refine you. They are evidence not of your failure but of your growth. The very fact that you can see better choices now is testament to your evolution. The past is unchangeable, but your relationship with it transforms everything. When you stop demanding that your past self had your current wisdom, you open to genuine self-forgiveness and integration. Today, I invite you to make a simple but profound choice, to hold your regrets with the same compassion you would offer a dear friend who made an understandable mistake, to see them as chapters, not conclusions, in your unfolding story. Remember, wisdom isn't the absence of missteps, it's the integration of all our experiences into a more whole and compassionate way of being. Your regrets have been preparing you for this moment of deeper understanding all along.